We can see it.
We can see it, Hailey.
Perfect. So today we're going to be discussing decrease in lease term. So decrease in lease term is a type of lease modification which is done through selecting the reason code decrease in lease term. This is usually done when the user and your lessor decide that they want to decrease the lease term during an active lease. So this is going to give you the ability to decrease the carrying amount of both the right of use asset and the carrying amount, and the carrying amount of the lease liability in the same proportion, however, in a different absolute adjustment. And the application is going to generate different treatments and posting documents for IFRS 16 and ASC 842. And we're going to cover the difference between the two standards a little later on. So in order to do a decrease in lease term, you're going to follow your normal workflow for a lease modification. And you will be selecting the decrease in lease term as your reason code. Additionally, it's really important that you unselect the modify contract rate in the lease modification pop-up window that you can see here. That is because no other modification or reassessment should be done at the same time as a decrease in lease term. Sorry. The next field that Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. So the next field that you can see here is the ROU asset decrease amount. So this is only applicable for IFRS. And what should be entered here is the amount in which you want to decrease your right of use asset by. So there's different methods that you can apply for this amount, and it should really depend upon your internal policies of how you want to calculate this. Once you click the submit button on your lease modification, a draft is going to be created and you're going to be able to navigate to your lease component level. From here, you're going to be able to edit your term and condition end dates as well as your last payment date. So in the example that I have here on screen, our original payment date was December 31st, 2024, and we changed the end date to be March 31st, 2024. No other fields should be updated at this step other than updating the last payment date and the expected end date. There are a couple of things to keep in mind when updating the term and condition end dates and doing a decrease in lease term. So the first one is if you have multiple base rent, that the end date can only be edited on the base rent that has the end date furthest in the future. Therefore, if you have multiple base rents, you can only edit the end date of one of those base rents. Additionally, if you have a lease extension, you can edit the end date of that lease extension. However, if you want to unexercise that lease extension and edit your base rent, those need to be done in two separate events. So you would need to do a reassessment first to unexercise your extension, and then perform this decrease in lease term to edit the end date of your base rent, and these should not be done in the same event. The last thing to keep in mind is that no other lease modifications or reassessments should be done at the same time. A decrease in lease term needs to be done as a single event on its own. Once you change your term and condition end date, you will continue your normal workflow to approve the contract, lease component, and activation group. As you are sending your activation group for assessment, you will be asked to select the effective date, posting date, and document date of the activation group. There's a couple of things to take into consideration when choosing your effective date. So the first thing to think of is that your effective date can't be before the effective date of a previous event. Additionally, your effective date must be in a month during the lease term, and the effective date must be in a month that does not have any payment accruals or asset depreciation already posted. Additionally, you need to know if your contract has payments in arrears or payments in advance, as that also impacts which effective date you can select. Once everything is approved and your contract is active and out of draft date, you will be able to see the unit documents posted for this lease modification. So this is where we're going to see the difference between our IFRS 16 and ASC 842. So for IFRS 16, the application is going to generate 3 adjustment postings. So for our asset, it's going to be reduced by that RRU asset decrease amount that we entered at the very beginning, whereas our lease liability is going to be reduced based off the new term and condition end date we enter. Therefore, any difference between the two is going to go to our gain and loss. Whereas with ASC 842, both our liability and our asset entries are going to be created based off our new term and condition end date, so there will be no entry to gain and loss. So now we are going to go over to the application and walk through an example together of doing a decrease in lease term. So I already have a contract here that's in contract phase operating and contract status active. And before we do any lease modifications, I'm going to show everyone the terms and conditions so we're all aware of what everything is before we do any modifications. So we have a contract from January 1st, 2020 until December 31st, 2023. And on July 1st of 2022, you and your lessor have decided to decrease the lease term until December 31st, 2022. So that is what we're going to go and do together. So in order to do so, we're going to navigate back to that contract level. We're going to go to our contacts menu and we're going to go for a lease modification. From this pop-up window, we will pick our amendment date. So we are amending this on July 1st, 2022. So that is what we will pick. And for our reason code, we will select our decrease in lease term. As previously discussed, we don't want to do any other modification or reassessment at the same time. So we are going to unselect this modified contract rate. Our next thing is this RU asset decrease amount. For purpose of demonstration today, I have already calculated this beforehand, and we're going to put $5,000 so we can easily see the flow of it through our schedules. And we're going to click submit, and the application is going to start creating a draft.
So while the draft is preparing, I just wanted to interrupt Haley's flow a bit. Sorry, Haley, stepping over you. I just wanted to let everybody know, if you guys remember, we had a couple of sessions where we covered different type of endings in Nakisa. So we talked about natural ending through ending through a termination option, purchase option, and casualty. They're more complex scenario like the one Haley is presenting right now, and we wanted to walk you through the steps and to the things that we believe are important. However, we'd love to hear more from your actual cases and how you are using this type of event. Also, keep in mind that this is a complex type of scenario that requires significant judgment from your business and accounting team. Go ahead, Haley.
Thank you. So our draft has been created. So we can go ahead and navigate to our lease component level, where we'll go to our terms and conditions, and we're going to be able to edit our end dates. So what we previously discussed is that our contract is now going to end on December 31st, 2022. So we're going to make that our last payment date as well as our end date. To follow our regular workflow, we're going to go back up to our contract level and send to approval. And since I have access, I will approve as well. We are now going to navigate to our activation group level, where we will send this to assessment. And here's where we need to select our effective date. So we are going to pick July 1st, 2022. We have payments in advance in this contract, so we can pick the day of our payment. And we will also put that as our posting date, but depending on if you are connected or not to SAP, will depend on what posting date is appropriate for you. Perfect. So our schedules are generated. So we will take a look at our schedules before approving them. So there's a few things to look for when you do this type of lease modification. The first one is that now our contract is ending in 2022. So it's no longer going until 2023. And we can see that our lease modification here in green is happening in July. Additionally, if we scroll over quite a bit, we should be able to see, here we go. So right now we are looking under IFRS, so we should be able to see that $5,000 that I entered during our lease modification. This $11,772.57 is the adjustment that's being created by changing our term and condition end date. And then we have our gain and loss of $6,772.57, which is our difference between our impact to our asset and the impact to our liability. However, if we go over to US GAAP, we will be able to see here that the impact to our asset and the impact to our liability are the same, and there's no impact to our gain and loss. So once you are satisfied with your schedules, we can go ahead and approve, confirm our classification, and then jump back to our contract to complete the assessment. Once the assessment's complete, then we can go ahead and look at the unit documents to be able to see what was posted for this lease modification. So we'll just give the application a couple of seconds here to load. Perfect. So we can jump back down to our activation group, to our unit list. We will show documents. So first we will look at our IFRS entry. So here we can see the $5,000 that we initially entered as our ROU adjustment, our impact to our liability, as well as the difference going to gain or loss. However, if we go over to our GAAP entry, we can see that the two sides of the entries are the exact same. So that is the end of a decrease in lease term. I'm not sure if there was any questions during that.